So I'm going to open the meeting, call a meeting to order for Wednesday, May 14th, and we're starting the meeting at about like 5:35. I'm going to call roll so we can confirm we have the quorum. Josh Fan,
Present.
Kate Ryan,
Present.
and Bill Marachek present. Okay, we have a quorum. The approval of the minutes we do have in the packet, the minutes of March 12th. Anyone have any comments or points they would like, amendments, changes?
It looks good to me.
I actually, am I allowed to make a comment on them?
Of course.
Under classification actions, it says human resources generalist, but I think it should be human services generalist. That was the new role.
Okay, that's good.
Human
Service.
services. Oh, you're right.
So, Erin, are you talking about the second bullet under 4 or both bullets under?
Just the first one,
Just the first one.
yes, the new position that supports the services organizations.
Thank you.
And she's honest too.
The other? All right, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes of March 12th.
I move we accept the minutes of March 12th as amended.
Right?
Second.
And all in favor? Josh?
Yeah.
Kate?
Yes.
And Bill, yes. All right. So we're gonna move on to item number 3, which is the Assistant Human Resources Director's report.
So tonight you'll see in your packet the usual chart of hires and terminations. Additionally, we are working towards collecting performance evaluations for non-union staff this month. They are due back to HR actually by the end of May 30th, so we'll be getting those and reviewing them, and that will be for the step increase part of performance evaluations. We are also working towards our Munis go live for July 1st. One of the parts of that within the HR scope is gathering our absence record cards from employees so that we can load those leave balances into Munis. And that way they'll be able to see their balances in real time and also on their pay stubs as well. Those are due back to HR by June 4th, and that gives us a little bit of time to audit and reconcile and then get it loaded into Munis itself. Open enrollment closed last week for the fiscal 26th year. So Melissa Samard, our benefits manager, has been managing that for us. I think that's all I have. Amalia is going to be showing us next our goal tracker, which is tied into the merit evaluations and the goals that we set amongst the town. But that will show us kind of how we're going to be looking at them and tracking.
One of the questions I had as I was going through this. What, if any, thought has been given to have a feedback or have a sense as to, okay, this was the first time we did this. How, is there a mechanism or something you put in place that says, maybe we should find a way to get other, I don't know, focus group, or I don't know if it's the senior management leadership team. But it seems like here's a great opportunity you've done something new, but typically there's always some things that can be done better, quicker, whatever, and unless you take the time to do that, it just evaporates. So
Yeah.
I encourage you to think about that.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I don't think we have anything formalized, Kimberly, for that piece. But I'll definitely make a note of that here so it's not forgotten about.
But do Josh or Kate, do you guys have any thoughts about whether that's? I think I don't want to do something that doesn't have some value. And sometimes value is very qualitative.
Sure.
Measurement. But unless we think about it or talk about it, we'll never do anything.
No, I agree with that, especially since this is a new process for you and for your department heads and, you know, managers moving down the organization. I think it's useful to have some feedback mechanism on what worked, what didn't, and
Agree, definitely agree.
I mean, I really think it could be as easy as well, it could be but you got focus groups, you could arrange from somebody or people volunteering. Which may not happen, but you've got the senior management leadership team, you know, take 15 minutes and in the course of the agenda, have feedback. It could be a survey monkey or some similar type of device that helps to pinpoint what did you like, what didn't you like, what would you change? So,
What worked well, what didn't
well,
work
yeah,
well.
yeah, but that goes, not rocket science.
Yeah.
If it's helpful, absolutely.
Mhm.
I think so. Cause we created this, but someone has to use it, and so to see the user experience feedback would be helpful.
Okay, any other? I think we can move on to Amalia's part, but before you start, what I'd like to do is, could you just share with us a little bit about your background and what you did in your previous life before you come into
oh, okay.
in a very general, but I'm thinking a sense of you know, just what you've done and how you've done it, or what you feel that particularly proud about, or that you enjoyed, or just so we get to know you a little bit.
Absolutely, well, thank you, I was actually gonna do that, because I don't know anybody in the room, so my name is Molly McCaffrey, I'm the CIO for the town of Concord. I started back in February of last year, and actually I was the IT operations manager. That's how I came in, and then about 8 months later, when the CIO position from open and Jason Bolger moved to the CMLP director role, I moved into the CIO role, so I've been with the town since February of last year. In my previous life, it's not really previous, I'm also, I've been in the Air Force for 26 years. I was on active duty for about 12 and a half years, where I did communications, basically what I do on the outside with the Air Force, and then I went into the Air National Guard for the past over 15 or so years, and I've been in the Guard, my unit's out of the Cape, and I do very similar IT work for the Air Force, and different user base, different population needs, but very similar, the technology is very similar that we use in the Air Force, that we use in the civilian sector. So that's a little bit about me, and I love I love my service, I wish I could stay longer than 30 years, because that's the retirement age, but I love being in the Air Force, I love what I do, and what I love most is the people that I get to work with, it's really tremendous. I get to meet people from all over the world and do things that are really cool, and I really love that.
Yeah.
The people are the best.
So before your presentation, could you describe or share with us, were you given a written specification about this is what, you know, from the town, this is what you should be, this is our goal? And these are, help
Yeah,
me understand
absolutely.
a little bit about the process.
Yeah, so actually it's in my presentation, because I think it's very helpful in understanding like how did, you know, because most people is like, why is, you know, technology involved in something that's very much in sort of the human resources area, and so I'll talk a little bit about that in the presentation if we want to jump to that.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought it was gonna be on the 18th of May, so I don't know why I labeled it the 18th of May,
Yeah.
but
I don't know what that is.
I'm sorry, I have to sign into my own teams for this. How do I go back, Malia?
go back to,
Like, how do I change this from Jess to me?
do you wanna just pop it over to me? I can,
It's on that computer.
okay. Let me, you can just bring it up. Are you?
Well, I'm not on my computer, it's on that
Oh.
computer, that's why I was just trying to get it through Teams.
Hold on.
You can go to the website.
Oh, yeah, I'm just gonna,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna,
Let me do that.
I can also jump on the Zoom call and just share my screen. It works best. One of the things.
Sorry, I know how to spell
When
Concord.
people are staring at you. It's harder.
Oh, that's funny. The agenda though.
Go down below,
Yeah,
it's just a one page.
Yeah, it was just the one page.
Go, go.
Did I go
Yeah, go
to?
back. You wanna do meeting materials
Yep, there
there.
you go.
There we
There
go.
we go.
Sorry, Lelia.
That's okay.
Should I share this to the Zoom as well so the
Yeah,
group can see
I
it?
think that makes sense. So otherwise,
One moment.
our hundreds of fans won't be.
Yes.
Fans.
Everybody that is tuning in for this presentation.
That was it.
Can you see this, Kimberly?
There we go. I will, that sort of, your question is very poignant because, like I said, the way we were sort of brought into the process is, so there was this development, the HR was given this task to collect all of the goals. And what we found was that the different departments were collecting them in different formats. Some people were using spreadsheets, some people were using lists, some people were, it was a myriad of things. And it was pretty clear that we had to sort of figure out from a technology solution, how do we standardize that so that they don't get like 5 different formats. So, Carrie came to us and like, is there a way for you guys to get a tool that we can track everybody's goals in the same format, in the same way, so that when we're looking at it, we're kind of comparing apples to apples. And so that's how we really got involved because, we have tools that are available to us. So what we did, and our goal was really, the tool was really designed for directors and managers. This was not as a tool for the employee to go in there and change things. It was really for the directors and managers that would be doing the evaluations with their folks to be able to have a standardized tool. So we developed it for top line managers and top line directors. And the other thing was we also wanted to make sure, from a technology perspective, I didn't want us using anything that was outside of our ecosystem. So I didn't want to have to buy something or use a different tool. So we looked what was in our Microsoft 365 suite, and we found that Microsoft Lists was a perfect tool for the job. But the second piece that they asked us to do is, apart from standardizing and making it consistent for all of the departments, is Harry also wanted the ability to be able to have some reporting metrics of like, so we have all this data of all these different departments in a light format. How do we report it? Like this would be helpful to know, if we have 5 town manager goals and we have 10 select board goals, like how do we track what percentage complete we are for each one, and you can sort of prepare reports. And so then we said, well, we use Microsoft Lists. Microsoft Lists is really good. Power BI is another tool that we have in our ecosystem that allows us to extract reporting out of lists. So we were like, all right, this is a perfect tool. We'll put the goals into the list and then we will extract a reporting tool. And with Power BI, if you're not familiar, there's more scenarios that you can pull. You can do reporting, you can extract, as long as the data field is consistent, we can do so many different reporting. We can talk about goals, we can talk about how many were consistent versus stretch. it gives you almost too much. So much flexibility, so much reporting. So those are the two tasks that we were given. Use a tool that we can standardize the information gathering, and then how do we get that tool to tell us where we're at? And sort of that's how we kind of got here. So myself and Nate Smith, the archivist, who also helps us a lot in the IT department, we kind of worked on that. We took Kimberly and her team had just this massive spreadsheet of all the goals that had been collected, and then we started just entering it into the system. And we started looking at the formats to make sure that we're consistent and that all the data fields are consistent, so we could do, good reporting, we'd be able to extract good data. So with that, what we did, I just want to show you, obviously,
the memos too, if you want to scroll
oh,
through.
sorry, it's okay, you can go ahead. Or you can, there you go.
You Next, like
Yeah.
this slide.
So obviously this is not, there's no real data in this, but what the tracker tool tells you, it gives you, I grayed out some of the areas so you wouldn't be able to see. But it gives you the top, the employee, whoever that we're talking about. Then it gives you whatever the goal was that was set by the manager that they came up with, that we extracted out of the spreadsheet that HR gave us. And then the completion dates, which obviously, and then the two, and then whether they were consistent or stretch goals. And then the goal ID is what makes it unique and is able for us to extract the data, per individual or, so there's unique data field. And then the only thing that the manager or the director really has to do is go in, and whenever it's determined to do an update, is they will fill in the percent complete. And for the first year, and I think to your point, for the first year, what we decided is that we were gonna just give them 4 percentages, because we didn't want, you were gonna have something, well, we're 16.2% complete, and we didn't want that in the data. So there was a little bit, it was either 0, 25, 50, 75, or 100%, and the manager and the employee would have to determine at those reporting times, where they were at. And so every employee has this, and then what we did was, go to the next slide. This is how we inputted all the data. It's a very, and the only reason I show that is it's very, very simple, because the other thing that we were tasked with is we didn't want anything that was super complicated or something that the directors and the managers would have to spend a great deal of time having to do it, especially for the departments that were huge, right? The, DPW that has a ton of employees and managers, that would be, so it was like, please keep it good, we can get the information we need, but it needs to be simple to use, and it has to be timed, and it can't take forever. So that's why we were very, very cognizant about how many fields we wanted, what were drop down menus, because sometimes those are better, because when you create just blank data fields, people put in different things, and then it's hard to extract the data. So we were very sort of clear about what we wanted in there. And then we also gave the ability for the notes side is really the only place where they can just sort of freehand what they want to put in there, but that's not searchable. That's just for the manager to be able to write themselves a note about something when they're talking to the employee about where they're at on that goal.
Does the employee ever interface directly with this, or is it all through the manager putting it in?
Always through the manager, yeah.
Well, what though, that's a good point, but where was there a quality control step to make certain that what the employee thought he or she was the goal, in fact, was actually typed?
Absolutely. So if you go to my next slide, so if you don't mind, before I answer that specific question, I just want to jump to the reporting piece. So this is just a sample data of what one of the many, many reports that we could pull. Now for this one, it was the percent complete based upon the town manager goal. So, and I just pulled one department, and this is not real data, so it's not, but we could do something as simple as that, or we could do something more complex. We could add the select board goals. We could add, hey, we want to just see the consistent versus the stretch. I mean, we have all, and be able to, in a very simple, for us, simple way, we push, basically, we push a button and it power automates and it gives us the data that, in a graphical format without us having to do a ton of work to make that happen. Now, obviously, we do quality check, right? We want to make sure the data is good, so it's only as good as what we put in, but we have many different types of things that we can extract out of that list for reporting purposes. The next slide. So to your point, sir, so what we did was, we took the extra step because number one, it was the first year that we did it, and it was just a lot of stuff. I personally trained every single manager and every single director one-on-one. So I had appointments with each one of them, went through the tool. And then the two things that I asked them to do is obviously update where they're, but also do a quality check of the data to ensure that what was put in there was accurately done, because we were doing a lot of data entry with that. So we made sure that, and there were a couple managers that came back and said, oh, take that out, that's not right. So, but it wasn't anything that was significant, it was more sort of, I don't want to say cosmetic, it was sort of cosmetic things, but we did have them validate those two things. like I said, so we developed, we did some internal testing with my team, so I tested it out with my own managers first. So that I could get feedback of like, is this easy? Did you find it helpful? You know, is there anything that you wanted me to add? So we did internal testing and tested it on my two managers. Then, like I said, in March, we spent pretty much the whole month of March training the managers and the directors on how to use it. And then we asked that they do 2 updates. They did one at the end of April, because we wanted to push it after the 250th, because everybody, there was a lot. So we're like, the first update was to be done at the end of April. The next update will be done at the end of May. And then it looks like the final update where they're, you know, where it's like sort of the final piece is gonna be done mid-July after the closeout of the evaluation period on June 30th.
And is the update are they captured separately, so you could run a report of the first update
Mhm.
against the second update?
We can,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can the employee at any time go in and say, gee, I wanna make certain that I remember all of the goals that I had,
Yeah,
that they individually have access to their.
so they do not have access to this, but prior to us developing this, HR went through the process of collecting all of the forms from department heads and managers where they had to, you know, write out their goal, they had to acknowledge signature that they, you know, they talked over it and they understood, I forget the verbiage, and then both the employee, the manager and the department head had to all sign, which gives you the level of, you should have read, you know, hopefully you read it and understood it. And when I trained the managers, you know, one of the questions they asked me was like, you know, how would you recommend best doing this? Well, I think the best way to do it is when you're ready to do your evaluation period and you're ready, you know, you sit down with the employee and you bring up, there's a view, it's called a card view, and it brings up little cards and you just go through each one. You're like, great, this is the goal that we talked about, you know, have a conversation. I actually just did it today with my employees. Like, okay, where do we think we're at on this goal? Are we about 25 and 50? And they tend to err on the side of caution, like, nah, I think I'm closer to 50 or I'm closer to 25. So that's really the way, you know, it causes that interaction to happen between the employee and the manager. But again, like this specific tool was designed really for the managers, and then they have a process, you know, so that they acknowledge their goals prior to us moving into this environment.
What's the prompt for the update? Is it an auto prompt or is it an email?
Yeah, so the way we did it for further, and I think this is where process improvement could be included, so what we did for this round, because it was our first round, is I sent out a task to all the managers, and then I have a reminder the week before the update is due, I sent out a reminder that please update your goals, you know, we're closing the window on this date, and we're gonna pull the report, you know, next week, so please make sure. And then I just have that on my rotating schedule for a reminder. As we get more sophisticated, because the tool can do a lot more, it can send emails, it can do a lot of different things, but I think our goal here was to develop the process. And like I said, have 2-3 rating periods where the two managers and directors use the process. Then the next step is in June is get their feedback and talk about updates of like, what did you like? What didn't you like? Or what was problematic, or, you know, what was wrong with it, or I struggled with this, or this was great, or could you add this field, those types of things. So once we complete the first 2 evaluation periods in June, that really is the goal, is to get the feedback, and then we can tweak and figure out how to make changes if it's required. And then, you know, hopefully we'll be able to reinitiate the process for FY 26, and we can just, you know, kind of repeat it, archive the old data, bring in the new data, or in some cases you may pull your goals in because they didn't get accomplished, you know, whatever that process is, you know, whatever that looks like going forward. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, but, well, I had another question.
Sure.
I think I get one, each get 2.
Well,
Go ahead.
no, I have questions, not necessarily about the tool, which looks, phenomenal. I'd love to have a tool like this, but I have questions about the process, the evaluation process, which is less IT and more HR, but, what if we could ask those now, or? I don't wanna.
Did you have a question about the
Well,
tool?
why don't we, because that's a really excellent geography to cover. Where does this reside at the completion of the fiscal year? It resides, is there a hard copy that is available or actually is placed in the employee's file, personnel file, or is everything just electronic? Or what's the thought about how the town wants to?
We were
Yeah.
talking through this, right?
Yeah, so the second piece to this is, so this is the mechanism for how we track and communicate, you know, how the managers track. The second piece is, and we had a conversation with HR, is at the end of the evaluation period, so 30 June comes. You know, all manager, all directors have filled out the form right now. The next thing that we're working on is the form at the end of the evaluation period that goes to the employee and says, okay, here's your 6 goals. Here's your, you know, you're 100% on all of these. You concur, yet employee signs, manager signs, department head signs, and it gets sent to HR. I'm of the mindset that it really needs to be in the digital format, because hard copy just is not the way to go going forward. Now, as far as I think your question is like, what happens if what happens if the file gets corrupted? What happens, do we lose all this data? No. So we have a pretty robust backup system where we can extract, you know, like if we know the last good file was on this date, we can pull, you know, we have recovery of data and we back it up. And I'm not so much concerned that it's gonna vanish, we're not gonna be able to replicate it. Now, that's, you know, that's where I feel think it's digital, but I think that's also a conversation, that's one of, we just, like I said, we just had a conversation with HR last week of like, how do we end this process and how do we get that final form to where it's gonna live in HR and, you know, and in what form that's that gonna look like? And I think we can continue down the path that we're going, because again, Microsoft has some tools that allows us to create a form, they can digitally sign it, it gets routed through the workflow process, and it just goes to the next person in the chain. But we're working through that piece a little bit, and we have until, you know, the end of the evaluation period and we'll do the same process, we'll test it. I'll test it, with, we'll test it internally with our own managers and then figure out, you know, kind of what they need and what we can provide with the tools that we have.
Is there any written process for a situation where there's a disagreement between the final, whatever, report and the,
Whether the goal was achieved. or
Yeah.
not.
right, I mean, but I can, from our past experience, I have a sense of what one avenue is, but is there a written?
I'm not sure, Kimberly, are you able to speak to that point?
There's not a written procedure in addition to the appeal procedure that exists in the PPPs today. But clearly there will be an opportunity for folks who have a disagreement or a difference of opinion on their completion of their goals. This is very exciting to see the updates that have been made at the end of April. There are a number of employees who have completed their consistent level goals. There's no one who has yet done both their consistent and their stretch goals. So, you know, it makes you feel like goals are properly in place. You're halfway through. You would expect that people would still be working on the more difficult of their goals. So I just want to acknowledge Amalia and Nate's work in taking something that we're building on the fly. You know, we knew that this first 6-month period was going to be, maybe, I think I used the word a little clumsy, you know, because we're building it as we go, but it's turning out beautifully. I'm not sure, Amalia, that our personnel board members got the full scope of the types of reports that we can pull from your hard work here. For each goal, let's say we're talking about town manager goal 1 or select board goal 18. You know, Amalia's team can pull reporting that shows how many people had an attachment to that goal and what percentage of those numbers of people that were attached to that goal, what percentage are complete. So if you're a select board member, the ability to see, you know, the completion on goals that are important to the town, both at the select board and the town manager level, it's going to be really slick.
Well, I can see some real, I mean, this is a fantastic effort for sure. I think the select board will be interested in some summary data. Which demonstrates the fact that you had a challenge, you had a goal, you accomplished it, but you really went further and above what I think many select board members would have even thought. I don't want it to mean select board members, it's just, but I think it's important that you're prepared to be able to tell the select board and the town manager by numbers or whatever, a presentation. Because this is a really, really fine accomplishment. This is the kind of thing as Kate, I think, was alluding to is, and I don't know what the issues might be, but there've got to be other municipalities that would love to be able to see the fact that this is there. I don't know what, I guess you probably one has to have a license to Microsoft, whatever, but those are pretty mechanical kind of things.
Yeah.
But it's a huge opportunity for the town by virtue of its accomplishment to let others know that what can be done. And, this is a really feather in your cap too, and what you've accomplished.
And I will say, this is certainly, I would like to really stop, this is. It's a team, this could not better signify a team effort, when we got the task. And in talking to Nate, who really, his primary goal is being, the archivist but we borrowed him and I said, here's what I'd like to do, here's what I want it to look like, and he's like, well, here's the things that we can do. So he has spent a lot of time crafting it and we've tweaked it, but I would say, like, this is a team effort and I just want to be clear about that. And one of the other things that I also think that was helpful, and I thank you for saying it, is it also tells you, like, through the graphical, like, there were a lot of goals, like the select board goals in the town manager. You could also see where the preponderance of the work is being focused, if it was 18 or town manager goal 1 or town manager goal 6. You could see that through the data because of how they how it was cataloged. So it gives you some really insightful information, or like maybe there's some goals that they're not, there's some that didn't get a lot of, like, why is that? Was it something out of their reach, or did we kind of not understand it? So it gives you some really, and like I said before, it's like sometimes there's just so many options of the reporting that you can pull out that you sort of do have to focus in on, like, what's the data that I'm looking for, what's the audience I'm trying to meet, but it can extract, and as long as the data is good and the fields are good, it works really well. And our goal is, like, we have to get through the full cycle, right? We have to finish, this is not the end product. The end product is that final form when everybody signs off on it and then it gets filed into the HR's, personal record. Like, that's the complete product. And if we can refine that whole process from beginning to end, that's something that, we could take and say, hey, here's how we've done it. The licensing is, it's not extravagant licensing. You do need an elevated license for, like, the power automate stuff, but it's not like out of this world, like, it's not crazy, it certainly is the time that we save. It's certainly worth the thing. So it's very helpful, and it allowed us to work quite, we had a lot of work with HR, into the times what, we needed to do.
Well, I recognize that, Jess and Kimberly, Aaron, were major players.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
we couldn't have gotten and accomplished this without each one of their contributions and their input. And again, it's quite a remarkable story.
Seems like after tonight, you're gonna have to go back on our recommendation and build in exceeded the goal.
It's really
New category, exceeded, not more than 100%.
Kimberly, did you have your hand raised?
I did. I just, if with, Bill, with your permission, I'd just like to add, looking at this from a global outside, the four walls perspective, today, so many organizations talk about employee engagement and linkage to goals and so forth. But Concord has really done something here that even in its, initial form as, we may be building it on the fly, but we've connected each and every employee to goals that are important at the highest level within the town. And the board should be, in my opinion, very, very pleased with your leadership around this and your inquiries around this and your interest in trying to make this even better for the next attempt that'll be starting in July. So I commend everybody who's been a part of this wonderful initiative that is not perfect, but that is a really good first effort in connecting our employees to the goals that are important to our citizens.
So I had a question, and again, this is more about not the tool, but so I guess I'm curious about how or who connects the sort of cards. So like you work with your employees, you develop these goals, that some are very concrete, like I want you to finish this project in X number of whatever months. Who connects that to the town manager goals and then the select board goals? Because what I found is that sometimes goals can connect to like 5 different, like you can have your individual goal can connect to 5 different things. And so who is making that determination, and is there kind of that's probably a big picture thing of matrices of, well, this talks to this goal and that goal, but how do you map that out?
Can you speak to that one, Kimberly?
Yeah, if you'd like me to take that. Initially, the request was that each SMT member would make that connection. And some were able to do that more effectively than others. Particularly, there are areas of the town where SMT members have far substantially more personnel to do connection. So to the extent that we did not receive that perfect connection, then I took it upon myself to have conversations with folks and do our best to make those connections. I will also say that at our most entry-level positions, there are some tasks that are more transaction-oriented that we had some challenge connecting to either a select board or a town manager goal. They were more operationally driven, especially for our field workers. And so we have some room for improvement around that connection piece. But for our first effort, I think the team did amazingly well.
So Kimberly, on that particular point that you just made, what do you see are the options going forward to help ease those connections? Or is it too soon?
No, I don't think it's too soon to have ideas around it. I'm not sure we know what the, perfect right answer is. But one of the things that I think Mark Howell, if he were here, has alluded to on several occasions, and I believe it came up when I presented to the select board back in December when I was in Concord. We talked about how the select board sets its goals in the fall and winter, typically, much, long after the fiscal year has started. And so they have had a desire, the chair at least has had a desire to kind of back that up and have the select board goals and the town manager goals completed earlier so that they can have a more, there's more time within the fiscal year for employees to reach those goals. There's also an acknowledgement that the town manager goal categories and the select board goal categories really haven't changed much over the last few years. So, there are 4 or 5 major, I'll call them umbrellas of goals. Like effective and efficient governance is one of them. And there are a number of goals under that for both the town manager and for the select board. So I think from a broad scope, I think we know the types of things that we want employees to go after as far as their goals are concerned. And so having the select board and the town manager complete their goal process a little bit earlier will be super helpful, I think, in making this as meaningful as it should be for employees and making those connections.
Well, I think that's a very excellent point. In my experience, goals need to be smart. And you have to keep that in mind as you work through these activities, work through the process. Because if the goal isn't smart, you're just not gonna be able to, in my experience, be able to have anything that's really valid and reportable. It just doesn't exist. That's always been sort of an ongoing struggle, quote unquote, to make certain that the goals are smart. All right, this has been,
Yeah, really interesting, very
very
Thanks,
interesting.
Molly.
It was a great, wonderful meeting, all of you.
All right, we're gonna move on to number 5,
Yeah,
employee satisfaction discussion.
you too, in fact, thanks for coming.
This was a point added per your request in the last one.
So you were help me just to remember the details behind.
This is where I will apologize for not having the minutes prepared for today, I would have been
Ooh.
fresher. Those are on me, that were, whatever had come up last meeting, I don't.
I have a couple notes. If you
Okay,
want me to,
yeah.
We suggested syncing up with the select board. Checking with MMHR for ways to track employee satisfaction, which I actually did. Send a message out to our distribution list and I didn't receive any responses. But I did receive a bunch of people with similar inquiries as to how to track it. And in my inquiry, I said outside of a survey because we had already identified that as a possibility. So it sounds like most track through a survey. And that we need more discussion and we should talk about establishing a plan next month.
Are we able, do you think, to have a discussion now, or do we,
I'm not sure, I feel, I mean, I'm happy to discuss, we have, kind of the meat of the issue, but.
see, I'm struggling a little with, I mean, I remember the last meeting, but what's. We need to, as I think you're pointing out, or I'm hearing you, Josh, is to, we need to be clear as to what our objective is here. And, and to what extent can we, I'm feeling that I don't have a good command, I guess, of trying to write at the moment.
Do you wanna add it to maybe next month's agenda?
Well, I think that's probably a good idea, but I think it might be helpful just to talk a little bit more about what we're trying to accomplish here.
Okay.
Employee satisfaction. I apologize, I'm sort of, what happens when you turn 25, but, I'm trying to really remember specifically as to what was driving this particular point, satisfaction of. What was the satisfaction that we were trying to accomplish or achieve?
So the note I have, just looking at my notes, that you noted, Bill, that we need to figure out the means by which we can capture employee satisfaction. Which relates back to the personnel studies task force. There was a survey involved.
Okay, so that's right, this all had the personnel study task force as the backbone of what we were talking about, and if we're charged by, in this case, the select board to be able to provide some kind of feedback on some kind of a basis as to the satisfaction of the workforce, then we needed to start to think about what was going to be the vehicle or vehicles, tools that would permit us to do that. We had one option was to simply take what the Personnel Study Task Force had used, and which was, is contained in that study. And replicate that, or not. And it was trying, I guess, to determine what tool was going to be perhaps, or what was maybe the best tool, second best, or whatever, third best. Not too dissimilar to what we were talking about in terms of the discussion with Amalia.
Just in terms of context too, Mark Howell had noted at that meeting that, the select board was thinking about this as they assess town managers' performance against goals with respect to personnel management. And is thinking about, again, like a year out and the building in, feedback to the select board in May or June of 2026. We must incorporate something into the cycle for fiscal year 27.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe what I'd like to suggest is maybe I can meet with Aaron and Jess and try to frame what we're trying to accomplish and provide a little bit more guidance. I mean, we can discuss all we want, but I think it might be helpful to try to focus, that's the right word, focus on how we're gonna spend our time and energy. So I think the best thing here, Aaron, is to let's defer this to the next meeting. And with a note that I will need to reach out to you and Jess. To help see if we can't come up with a little bit better plan.
Good.
Okay, so we've got the employee handbook progress, number 6, which is Kimberly, you're back to you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to give an update on the handbook. We have been successful in coming up with the inaugural draft. It has been sent as of yesterday to legal for review. If you think of this project like a funnel, we started out very broad and now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. We do have a number of outstanding items to review internally, but they really don't impact the legal review of the handbook. And so our hope is that the attorney will turn it around. She had given us an estimate of a 3-week turnaround. So we're looking to have that back prior to the next board meeting, and we'll be able to give you an update on how shortly the item will be before you for review. One of the things that's been helpful, and I believe in one of our earlier updates, I gave you kind of what I'm calling the crosswalk of all the bylaw sections, the APPs, the PPPs, everything that has to do with employment. I've done a crosswalk as to where it landed within the new employee handbook. And there are a number of new policies that did not exist today that are being placed into the handbook for your review as well. And so my goal is to have the handbook complete, to have the crosswalk so you can see where everything landed and what is new within the handbook. And then to give you a list of anything that we're changing that is not the same as it was in the prior bylaw or APP or PPP. And I think those are going to be fairly limited. The list will be fairly limited. But just as we have made some updates to recent policies like vacation policy, bereavement policy, et cetera, and we've made improvements to them, this is an opportunity for Concord to consider making improvements on each of these policies. So there may be a few opportunities that you'll see on that list.
Okay.
Kimberly, review, like the policies we've talked about, like bereavement for one, do they stand separate from the handbook? Are they incorporated into the handbook?
Incorporated in.
All the policies are contained within the handbook.
Josh, it's we're doing our very best to have a one-stop shop.
Yeah. I mean, it's great.
You know, Erin did her first orientations in these last few weeks, and we've been talking about, you know, how rather than sending people to PPPs that are numbered and APPs that are numbered, some of which have the same numbers. And, you know, it will be, I think, a big improvement for not just the town, but for employees as well, to have everything in one place.
So this is intended that it reside electronically.
Correct. Yeah.
Will it have will one have the ability to search on keywords to assist them?
Yep.
Them?
Yeah, and doing it electronically gives us the opportunity to create links to the website to pertinent information. So, you know, today we have a page for this and a page for that. We'd be able to make those links and also make links to outside law, you know, general laws and so forth as well. So it's still printable. It's still very usable in a paper form, but the goal would be to make it interactive and available electronically.
Good. This is another good example of really some great work that's been done by the town and by Kimberly and others to
As Amalia said, you know, these projects are full team efforts. And it takes a village. You know, there's a lot of historical knowledge of some of these policies, why we did things the way we did them. Do we want to keep them the same? Do we want to, you know, make improvements where we can? And I just want to acknowledge the help of not only the HR team, but throughout the organization. It's been, I've, for a long time now, I've said many times, you know, I can't wait to look at the end of these assignments and look back and see what we've accomplished together. Because with the leadership of the personnel board and the town manager and the select board, everyone's been very supportive of these initiatives. And I think we'll be able to see an enormous improvement for our employees and for the town.
It would be nice, and this is, I think, a real stretch, but it would be nice if it would be possible to tie this into reduced turnover and greater opportunity for people to join the town, but that's a little bit too much of a stretch right now.
Still, it would be nice. Let's just see.
It's a good goal.
Yeah.
It's a good goal. Okay, thank you, Kimberly. Now we will, our next meeting is gonna be a week later, and it's gonna be the third Wednesday, if my memory's right.
Yes.
Okay, so the third, and then you will be continuing with the town until the end of June, is that correct, Kimberly?
Yeah, actually, I've planned a little bit of vacation toward the end of June, so I plan to be with you for your next meeting, and then that will conclude my time with the town.
Any other items to cover, talk about? Right. This is one of our faster meetings.
Yeah.
We need to publicize this to the community.
Yeah. It's important in May that we keep it brief.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Yeah, it is. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, second?
Second, yes.
All right, all in favor?
Yes.
Dave
Yes.
and Bill, yes. All right.